Hey there, it's Mischa, and in today's episode, I'm going to share a wonderful experience I had recently being interviewed on the hot seat of a podcast. And then I got to share that experience with the Influence Army membership, the community, and we just had a great conversation. Lots of takeaways. Listen in, it's a ton of fun. You know when someone is selling from stage, and at the end, the audience gets up and rushes to the back of the room to buy? That's a table rush. My name is Mischa Z, and the Table Rush Talk Show is all about bringing you the tools, strategies, and tactics that you can use to grow your audience and inspire them to buy. I was just interviewed, and it was super fun. Being interviewed is fun when you got the stories right and you know it was amazing. And I'll tell you this, it's really cool to, we've got the story bank worksheet, right? And before I was interviewed on what's called the E-comm X Factor, and which is not traditionally what I think people would think would be an audience that I would speak to. And they were super stoked about, this influence tour and all this kind of stuff, right? And also telling customer stories. But what my point is that I was literally listing out stories that I could tell before. I was like, from my mortgage days, like all the key stories. I just listed a bunch of them. I'll tell you what I did. So I was putting in action what we are talking about. Let me find him quick. Okay, so my history of finding the niches and how I systemize them. That was the theme that I was going to talk about, or one of the ways I was going to go. So I have one called the recipe box, where that's one of my story arcs, or that's one of the stories within the story arc. So the recipe box, when I started in sales, I would keep track of my leads on the 5x5 note cards, and I would run them through a recipe box. And that was the foundational piece of my sales training, right? And then I have another thing that I wrote. One of my stories is there is the MLS mining and the precursor sites to Zillow and Redfin, where I made some Excel scripts. These were just things to trigger myself, right? And then I wrote, there's the Title Pro system used throughout. Then I put, there's the meltdown and the niches I found at Wells Fargo. So back in 2008, when the mortgage meltdown happened, my gift at finding niches, while the rest of the world, financial world, was in complete chaos and melting down, and mortgage companies were going out of business, and Wells Fargo was like, is this bank even going to survive? And everybody I knew in the industry was getting fired or laid off, or the mortgage companies were gone overnight. I found these two niches, and I was like one of my most successful times in the mortgage industry. It was crazy, right? And then I listed a few others, and it's not that I spoke to them all, but as we were going through the conversation, I was able to pick out each little story. And it was so powerful. And the guy was like blown away. So yeah, I would encourage everybody to go back to that story bank worksheet and do that exercise. What are the key story arcs? Like one of mine, if you remember, if you look at the story bank worksheet, one of them was like my mortgage sales days, right? And so, yeah, we want to be cataloging those stories. And again, it's as simple as like just putting down the thought. What were the thoughts that I had again for mine? Like the recipe box, that is the trigger for me for that story. The MLS stands for multiple listing service. The MLS mining and precursor sites to Zillow and Redfin. Everybody knows what Zillow and Redfin is? Cool. It's a powerful story that I know I will get to use. The Title Pro system, and there's the meltdown and the niches I found at Wells Fargo. and a bunch of others. So, and I was really cool because I was praying beforehand, as I'm getting ready to go on this podcast. And I was like, this is the first time I've stretched very tactically to go on a podcast I wouldn't necessarily go on. And so super nervous. And so beforehand, I was just like, all right, God, this was actually, I started at 9:30, but I woke up at 5:30. I was like, God, how can I be of service to Yaron, Ron is his name, and his audience? Like, how can I be of service? What could I bring to the table? And like a half an hour before, and I started doing all this research on ways I thought I could be helpful. But all of a sudden, these stories started coming to me, and I was just listing them out. So it was a really powerful moment. I would encourage anybody to do that, to like ground for a minute and be like, all right, I know that I'm going to be going on podcast tour here shortly, and I'm going to be speaking on podcasts about what I love to do. Like bring some stories to memory for me. Like take some time, sit down for a half an hour or an hour or even 15 minutes, something, and just be like, all right, I want to, I'm here to carry a message and serve some audiences. Like, what stories should I be telling? I just want to ask real quick, maybe put it in the chat. Were those stories I just told useful, or give me a thumbs up or something like that? Cool. Thank you, Carissa. I'm in this mode right now of, and I would encourage everybody to try and latch onto this, of test, try, learn. Test, try, learn, right? Like ultimately we're going to be testing and trying and learning. And so there's going to be no doing wrong, right? We're not doing anything wrong. We're testing, we're trying, we're learning. So we might go on podcasts with a message that turns out wonky, but it doesn't matter. We will learn something. The audience will get something out of it. And we're testing, trying, learning, right? And it's all value of what we're doing. And I'm just in that space right now. And I've been more and more, it's like this last 3 months of like, there's no wrong. It's like, just let's test, try, do. Okay. Yes. Can I get a thumbs up? Let me see some hands in the air. Yes. So I think that's kind of a bigger picture thing. I think we can get trapped in like, I need to explain everything in 2 words. So heart-centered entrepreneurs. So when I was talking on the podcast today, I was like really quick right away. He's like, I was able to say, yeah, I've got this membership. It's called the Influence Army. And I was hesitant to say heart-centered entrepreneurs because this guy's E-comm X Factor, which is about as feels in the moment as about as unheart-centered as possible. Right. But I'm like, heck with it. I'm calling out my audience right away. I had an opportunity right away at the beginning of the show to do it. And I did it. And I was like, heart-centered entrepreneurs. And then I explained a little bit of what that was. Right. I took a second, explained a little bit of what it was. And you know what he did for me? Because he was really loving what I was talking about. He reframed it in a way that worked for him. Because he was like, I want my people to love what you're saying. And so he kind of in this really cool way, spontaneously was like, expanded it for me, if that makes sense. Right. And it took everything I had, and not everything, but a lot in that moment, right at the beginning, to be like, yeah, I'm building this in. Because he was like, right away, he's like, what's this influence tour stuff? I have to know more. In effect, that's right where the conversation turned, right out of the gate. And I was like, well, got my Influence Army, where I help heart-centered entrepreneurs bring their message to market in a big way. And real quick, heart-centered, da da da. And I said what I did say as well, because I was on a podcast for people that create products, physical products. Shauna's in, everybody knows Shauna by now. Shauna Stevenson, she's got the Elevate. Shauna Stevenson's in our community, but she has Elevate, a physical product, right? So I immediately was able to start speaking about Shauna being in heart. I didn't speak to her. I didn't say she's a heart-centered entrepreneur, but I'm like, oh yeah, we have this gal Shauna in here who's got a physical product, and this is what we're doing. And I just had her on my podcast, and this is how, because he all of a sudden was fascinated. He's like, yeah, I know, man. All of us introverted physical product guys, like, we need to know more. Anyway, I think we can get hung up in feeling like we will have opportunities to expand on as we're being interviewed what our little I help blank means. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Just think of the opportunity we have. Like literally a storm is rising. I just love that thought. I just had that vision of like a storm of love, call it whatever you want. I just think of it, like when a storm's coming and it's like the clouds, it's got that look and you're like, something's coming, right? And it's going to be powerful. Like, that's what we're doing. I love that visual. Maybe I should think of a better one. I literally just got the chills.
It's a good one.
But I'm thinking there's so many opportunities for all of us to, like, as one of us gains momentum, like Aristotle, if you're out there leading the charge, you know what I mean? And like what you're learning and bringing back is going to be crazy, and the opportunities and you know what Stacy does, and you learn more about Jackie and her quantum field talk and which is epic. I think I just love that so much. And then Carissa,
I read that shit every day.
and Carissa, it's like we're gonna be able to help each other. Just be like, you're not gonna believe who I just talked to, and they need to talk to you, or you need to be on their podcast, or they literally asked me for what you do. Talk to them. You know what I mean? Like, that's the stuff that's just gonna be that's what happens. Oh, I'm so excited. Okay. Anyway, we good here? I could keep going. I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to eat and get back to it. And I love everybody. This has been so amazing. And we're a storm that's rising, man. It's good. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Table Rush Talk Show. For resources to help you sell your stuff, go to belove.media/resources. That's belove.media/resources. And be sure to subscribe, comment, 5-star, and share. Thank you again for listening.